I do realise this title makes little sense if you haven't been following the channel for a while. It'll probably result in a lower view count, but I mean, it's all in the lap of the YouTube gods anyhow. Now, speaking of which, if you'd help us out with a like on the video and a subscribe, that'd be a big help. Now, a while ago, 2019 to be exact, we were in Dubrovnik and we took a day trip into Bosnia, which was amazing. It's worth a quick watch for context, but what we did see were 3 incredibly singular and unique places in Europe, including Mostar, Pochteli, and the Krovice waterfalls. All 3, big tick, massive fan. Have to say, what we failed to get, despite the comparatively lengthy trip back, was really any footage of the Bosnian countryside that we were especially happy with. While I can't be 100% on the final stage of our drive, it all starts to look a bit similar, but based on a few clues and limited options available to drive across country in Bosnia, the trip looked something like this. As you saw from last time, we'd just done a fair cross-section of the Montenegrin coast, and after staying the night in Dubrovnik, we had an open day. So, this time, heading under our own steam in a hire car, we actually headed south out of Dubrovnik and crossed the border a relatively short distance away here. This turned out to be a solid call, as there were scarcely 3 cars ahead of us on the Croat side, maybe 6 on the Bosnia side, plus with Bosnia itself seemingly cloaked in an ominous mist, like some fresh DLC in an online game, I decided in something of a first to risk this uninteresting shot of the border gates. And with scarcely a glance at passports, we were across. While it was pretty moody, we were due thunderstorms on the forecast, so anything that was not that was a welcome change. And yeah, outside of the town of Trebinje, which is about 20 minutes from the border, villages, or even just buildings at all, became more the exception than the rule. It takes quite some getting used to just how sparsely populated this part of Bosnia is. What followed was an extended drive through the countryside, which I'd actually like to present in something of a supercut. As the mountainous countryside unfurled before us, we were joking about the Bosnian pyramids, which is an interesting pseudo-archaeological rabbit hole to fall down if you have a few minutes, mainly because we were passing quite a few geometrically pleasing hills, and it was like, gasp, Bosnian pyramids confirmed. I mean, it's no shade against Bosnia itself. The claims are confined to a niche few and massaged by some locals nearby. But come on guys, burden of proof, nature isn't as adverse to straight lines as you might think. After about an hour, we stopped off at pretty much the first business we'd seen that was showing any signs of life, and with a little mime and some broken English, we bought some cherry juice and took a moment to enjoy the utterly breathtaking views across the valley. Yeah, it felt so good to be somewhere this remote. I mean, I'm sure people who regularly go solo free climbing in Bhutan can scoff at us soft city folk, but I don't know, something about being somewhere comparatively unknown, especially with the distance involved, and just looking out at the valley and listening to the sound of a rain shower on the corrugated roof. Credit where it's due, this might be a squat toilet, but it sure is well presented. Well anyway, after about 45 minutes more, we eventually pulled into our first major target, the town of Stolac. And to rectify something from last time, finally, a low-angle flag shot. Yeah, I didn't manage to get one of those in the last Bosnia episode, although I think I might be able to account for why. I mean, this time, the area we were driving through was mostly part of Republika Srpska, and we saw the Serbian colours being flown with a noticeable absence of the national flag of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Anyway, Stolac. We had got just the briefest glimpse of this place on our way past in our last visit to Bosnia, but dark clouds and the minibus window had rendered any decent footage useless. Now, not only did we have a chance to check out this incredible castle, but in a quite remarkable turnaround from the mist at the beginning of our trip, we now enjoyed the town in glorious sunshine. Now this was a Tuesday in late September. For comparison, in Montenegro on a cloudy Sunday, 2 days previous, at this prohibitively high Venetian fortress up a narrow woodland trail, we saw about 2 different parties while we were there. But here, with a fully paved walkway in full view of the town, not one single person up at the castle the entire time. It was open and free to just walk around, and yeah, what a remarkable place. Other than having beautiful views of the valley and the town with the call to prayer echoing off the mountains, it really is something. Stolac Fortress, which is technically the old town of Vidoški, is a pretty important castle in Bosnian history. By the 1600s, it had 13 towers and was one of the best defended towns in Bosnia. The first datable reference to Vidoški is in a charter from 1444, but there were doubtless fortifications away before that. We have finds here from the 2nd centuries AD, at least in the town below, and the nearby vicinity was occupied as far back as the Paleolithic. So that was a really special place to catch, and there's a lot more to see in just this region. We took a quick loop back through the town, enjoying the palette of autumn creeping in and taking in the tranquility of the river. Yeah, you know what? Quick supercut, don't want to waste this. Back into the car, and barely a couple of minutes down the road, the Prevalier waterfall. Now this varies greatly depending on the time of year. A quick look at the reviews range from "wow, what a stunning torrent" to "nothing to see, 1 star." So yeah, in the height of summer, you might be disappointed, and don't forget, despite the fact it is often depicted daubed in thick cloud, and I mean, yeah, that's not uncommon, Bosnia can also get oppressively hot. We appear to have landed somewhere in the middle, and with there being a fair amount of rainfall in the days preceding, it led to a modest flow down some of the Cascades. It gave us a chance to spend some of our Bosnian money as well. We got this out of a cash machine just for if we needed to pay like entrance fees and places weren't taking card, which is something that happened rather frequently in Montenegro. But Vidoški was unmanned, and the waterfall isn't like a paid attraction or anything. I'd forgotten the Bosnian currency is abbreviated to BAM. That's fun. Anyways, what a great place to take in a coffee and a beer. The next one was a little harder to reach, not because it was all that far away. We barely even left the neighbourhood of Stolac, but after the hill up, you then have to grin and bear a couple of kilometres of gravel track, and in a hire car, that's a bit nerve-wracking. But at the end, apart from views for absolute miles in all directions, you are rewarded with Dausen. Dausen is a rather unique fortress. It was the capital of the Dausi, an Illyrian tribe who were based around this region, and they adopted some Hellenic influences by way of trading contacts. I'm not going to go too deep into defining it because there are few things that get you shouted at on the internet quite like the Illyrians, and suggesting they were anything less than a pan-Balkan super empire that... yeah, you know what, never mind. The single most impressive thing is this wall with cyclopean blocks and even the just discernible curve of an entrance arch. This is all unusually grand for a hill fort. It's kind of closer in form to an Acropolis fortification. Most of the Illyrian forts you can visit nowadays, sadly, are either entirely occupied by something much newer, or it's just like a couple of blocks one atop another. But this is a really unique site in Bosnia, and especially since it was putting the hire car on the line, was relieved to have made it. And the views all round were spectacular. And despite the thunder and dark clouds being barely over the next hill, no more than a couple of rain splats on the windshield and the sun had properly decided to emerge. Bit of a nerdy stop next, but couldn't resist since it was so close. The Rajimile necropolis is an incredibly significant survivor from medieval Bosnia. There are examples of these spread all around the countryside in this region, but there's a considerable collection of Stečak tombstones here at the Rajimile necropolis. There's 133 just on this site, and the stonework here is fascinating. There's some decorative motifs and various crosses, but even some figurative art and hunting scenes. Now, while some of these are from the 1300s, most date from around the 14 to 1500s. There's inscriptions listing various noble families buried here, and some of which can be corroborated with written sources we have. I've got to say, looking at these, I was under the impression they'd be much earlier. I mean, medieval art is hugely diverse. In fact, medieval, quote marks, can span almost 1,000 years, so depending on your definition, the label can drift into being almost meaningless. But in the broadest strokes, areas formerly part of the Roman Empire, from ballpark 500 to 1000 AD, you usually find a more naive style of figurative art, such as these famous Saxon examples at Wixworth in England, or these Visigothic pieces in Spain, or close to here, these from Split in Croatia. Yeah, they're making a go of it, but it's a far cry from the level of sculpture the Romans and the Greeks had attained. Now, by comparison, one of the most famous images to come out of the Radjimile necropolis is this guy. And as I'm always the first to point out, no, of course I couldn't do any better myself, but just placed side by side with other sculpture happening in the Balkans, or in Europe in general at this point, it's surprising that a lot of these figures still have this quite naive style. Anyway, it's an absolutely fascinating place. There's such diversity of different artistic ideas in all these funerary monuments, and to have such a large collection in one place, definitely worth a visit. And with that, we had to turn our nose back towards the border, but the journey back had one final surprise. As it turns out, this motorway had just been completed that year, and while I'm not a petrol head by any stretch of the imagination, the vicarious thrill of zipping down these beautiful fresh ribbons of asphalt, often with scarcely another car in sight, was incredibly exhilarating, not least because the views off to either side were also some of the most spectacular vistas I've seen in the Balkans. Well, that was almost time up. We made the mistake of aiming for a more minor border crossing, only to discover it's mainly for locals. Anyway, Google has since helpfully been updated with this not for tourists label, so instead it was down through Neum and back into Croatia. We did of course have some amazing views along the coast as we made up the distance south to Dubrovnik. It had turned into one of our most incredible days of sun. I mean, what a treat. So, once again, this title is wildly misleading, as quite contrary to a day in Bosnia, this was in fact a little shy of 7 hours in Bosnia. So clap me in irons and throw me in His Majesty's dungeon for perjury, for in what must be a first for YouTube.com, the title of this video has proved to be somewhat less than accurate. You know, truth be told, I'm actually expecting a little scorn for this anyway, because on the day at least, I was somewhat patting myself on the back, like, yeah, look at us, exploring more of the interior of Bosnia, a bit off the tourist trail. Yeah, good for us. This would make a good mini episode. It was only when I got back and consulted a map, I was like, oh wait, what? I thought we'd made some significant progress, but turns out, despite seeing some beautiful places, between the 2 trips we've done so far, we've still not even scraped 10%. Well, look, what can I say? Bosnia is a big place, and this format of insert Balkan nation in one day doesn't exactly permit comprehensive coverage. But look, anyone can wander a GoPro through Dubrovnik Old Town and call themselves a travel journalist. So I'm making no claims whatsoever that we deserve some special credit, but hey, to highlight some fascinating places in a nation that gets far less attention, and to get into the lush natural landscapes that Bosnia offers, and to underline, massively enjoyed this. Despite all the amazing things we caught in Montenegro and the excitement of being back in Dubrovnik again, this really stole the show with its spectacular rolling countryside. And yes, speaking of this coastal route to Dubrovnik, we not only have this whole episode on the history of Ragusa/Dubrovnik, after that we have another on the town of Ston, just over there, and other lesser-known parts of what was the Republic of Ragusa, such as the Elefiti Isles, so do have a watch of those. In fact, you can pretty much just go to town in the Balkans playlist. There's loads in there, not only from Croatia, Bosnia and Montenegro, but we've got plenty coming in just the next few weeks. But next time, we're actually diverting to a few episodes in Italy. Yeah, long overdue to share what we've been up to there in the last couple of years. If you've enjoyed the music in the background, it's ours. We create all the tracks for these episodes, and you can find them on bandcamp.com. If you want to support the channel, why not throw us a couple of quid there? You can follow us on all the socials, and drop us a subscribe, and we'll catch you very soon.